What if I told you that World War II wasn't just about tanks, bombs, and trench coats? Nah, it was a cocktail of bad egos, worse decisions, and the kind of international screw-ups that made everyone pay. And get this, spoiler alert, the Germans technically won, not on the battlefield, but in how the world was reshaped after the war. Confused? You should be. Stick around, because by the end of this, you'll be seeing global politics, nuclear threats, and authoritarian movements in a whole new light. Let's talk history while watching completely unrelated footage, just because I don't know how to edit a video. But don't worry, I promise you'll understand history like never before. Or maybe even like it. Probably. We're diving into the Treaty of Versailles, that lovely little agreement that made sure Germany would have a meltdown. We're talking about the rise of dictators like Hitler and Mussolini, who were basically auditioning for the worst villains in history. Oh, and let's not forget about the chaos that followed. Because when the dust settled, the world was not only scorched, it was divided into two superpower camps that couldn't stop staring each other down for decades. So yeah, stick with me. We're going full throttle, and by the end, you'll get why this stuff still matters. Right here, right now. Trust me, you don't want to miss this ride. Alright, buckle up, because we're about to rewind the clock a little to the year 1919, a time when people were still reeling from the wreckage of the First World War. So what's the first thing the world's powers do? Oh, just sign a treaty that hands the blame for the whole mess to Germany, puts a boot on their neck, and then asks for an absurd amount of cash. Because of course, that'll make everything better. Enter the Treaty of Versailles? And Germany? Fuming. Picture being kicked while you're already down, but you're told it's your fault you got beaten. Nice one, Europe. But here's the thing. You can't throw a bunch of wounded egos into a pressure cooker and expect it to stay cool. Fast forward a few years, and surprise, Germany's economy is tanking. And in the midst of all this chaos, who steps in? Oh, none other than Adolf Hitler. Picture a bad Instagram influencer who promises to make Germany great again. But instead of selfies, he's all about tanks, swastikas, and aggressive speeches. Oh, and bonus points, he blames everyone else. Jews, communists, the Allies, anyone but himself. You know, classic villain stuff. Meanwhile, in Italy, Benito Mussolini is like, hold my beer, as he decides to resurrect the Roman Empire. And by that, I mean he's yelling fascism at anyone who'll listen and stomping around Europe like he owns it. Spoiler alert, he doesn't. But he'll try. Oh, will he try? And then, drum roll for the Pacific, Japan. Japan's idea of good times involves taking over all the land they can get their hands on, because who needs peace when you can have empire? So, they start doing their best impression of a colonial superpower, invading places like China and Korea. Why? Because clearly, world peace just isn't their thing. Now picture this, these three nutjobs, Hitler, Mussolini, and Japan, are out here building their empires, each trying to outdo the other in a world that's already on edge. And what are the other world powers doing? Staring blankly, trying to figure out what just happened. No one's paying attention to the building storm. And trust me, it's not just some rain clouds brewing. And that's when it starts getting dangerous. Let's be honest. The 1930s were basically the tutorial level for world-ending stupidity. So, picture this. The global economy's collapsed, everyone's broke, bitter, and looking for someone to blame. Democracy's having an identity crisis, and fascism walks in like it owns the place. Enter the three horsemen of what could possibly go wrong. Hitler, Mussolini, and Imperial Japan. Let's start with Hitler, because of course. Now this bloke didn't just want power. He wanted Lebensraum, or living space, which is dictator speak for, let's invade Eastern Europe and pretend it's for national security. And people bought it. He sold revenge, wrapped in nationalism, sprinkled with some of the worst mustache-based propaganda you've ever seen. Germany, humiliated after WWII, lapped it up. Meanwhile, over in Italy, Mussolini was busy cosplaying as the Roman Empire, except with fewer laurel wreaths and more shouting. His pitch? Let's make Italy great again. Which in practice meant bombing Ethiopia, aligning with Hitler, and turning the country into a poorly run fascist circus. A man so dramatic he made his own downfall into an opera. And Japan? Oh, Japan wasn't sitting quietly at the back, no. They looked at the Pacific and thought, we'd quite like all of that, thanks. They were running their own brand of imperialism, militaristic, ultranationalist, and absolutely brutal. Ask China. Nanking still echoes. Now here's the kicker. The rest of the world saw this unfolding and, well, they mostly sent strongly worded letters. The League of Nations, bless it, was about as effective as a fire alarm made of toast. Every time someone shouted, hey, they're invading someone again, the League shrugged and said, let's not be hasty. Then came Spain, the Spanish Civil War, A little rehearsal for the apocalypse. You had fascists backed by Hitler and Mussolini versus communists and anarchists backed by the Soviet Union. It was a full-on proxy war before that was even trendy. Cities bombed, civilians slaughtered, and Europe just watched, taking notes like it was a football match. Back in Germany, Hitler was leveling up fast, reoccupying the Rhineland, annexing Austria like it was on sale. Then, with terrifying efficiency, came Czechoslovakia, one bite at a time, and the world, still waving treaties like they were magic spells. We gave him the Sudetenland. Surely he'll stop now? Oh, sweetheart, no, he won't. And then Poland, 1939, boom, blitzkrieg, tanks, planes, chaos. Britain and France finally woke up from their diplomatic coma and declared war. But by then, Hitler was already halfway through his breakfast. Now add Stalin to the mix. He and Hitler signed a non-aggression pact, the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, where they basically said, let's split Poland and pretend we're friends. Spoiler, they weren't. That bromance lasted all of 5 minutes before Hitler turned around and stabbed the Soviets in the back like a Cold War Caesar. By 1941, Japan had bombed Pearl Harbor, Hitler had invaded the Soviet Union, and the world had officially set itself on fire. So to sum it up, you had a trio of dictators with ego problems, economic despair fueling rage, and world leaders playing chicken with fascism and losing. The result? A global war unlike anything humanity had ever seen. And it all could have been stopped earlier, but wasn't. Sound familiar? It should, because we're still dealing with it. All right, so the bombs stopped falling in 1945. Hitler shot himself in a bunker, Japan got nuked twice, and the Allies cracked open a bottle of victory champagne. Roll credits, right? Wrong. See, that was just the season finale. The war may have ended, but the mess it left behind? Oh, we're still cleaning that up with industrial-strength moral detergent. And surprise, it doesn't come out. Let's start with the big one. The United States and the Soviet Union, those two allies, who barely trusted each other enough to share a cigarette, suddenly found themselves as the last two players in a very bloody game of Monopoly. Except instead of hotels, they started collecting nuclear warheads. And instead of go to jail, they created NATO, the Warsaw Pact, and about 50 years of Cold War dread that made schoolchildren practice duck and cover drills as if a desk could stop a mushroom cloud. Spoiler, it couldn't. And if you've ever wondered why your Nan's microwave clock blinked 12 for 6 years straight, it's because somewhere deep inside, she knew the Soviets might push the button before she could. Enter the United Nations. Formed in 1945. Never again, they said. We'll talk it out, they said. Well, unless you're Rwanda, or Bosnia, or Syria. Then the talking comes with a bit more shrugging and a lot more civilian casualties. Turns out collective security sounds lovely on paper, but behaves more like a polite group chat where everyone agrees violence is bad while secretly arming their favorite side. And speaking of arming people, thanks, Cold War. Ever heard of a little thing called proxy wars? Yeah, the US and the Soviets started tossing weapons and ideology like confetti at weddings, but the weddings were in Korea, Vietnam, Afghanistan, Angola, and about half a dozen Latin American countries. Each one a lovely holiday spot before the superpowers rolled through like emotionally unstable step-parents going through a custody battle. And then there's the nuclear arms race. Once America showed it could turn 2 cities into radioactive glass in under 5 minutes, suddenly every global leader with a god complex wanted a big red button of their own. France, China, the UK, Israel, wink wink, India, Pakistan, North Korea. It's like Oprah showed up to the UN shouting, "You get a bomb, and you get a bomb." Only instead of tears of joy, we got mutually assured destruction and fallout fan fiction. Still not sweating? Let me bring it a bit closer to home. Why do Russia and NATO glare at each other like divorced exes at a custody hearing? Why is Ukraine being torn apart right now like it's some Cold War sequel nobody asked for? Because World War II broke the planet, and when they put it back together, the glue was more political ego than actual strategy. And Germany? The country that started it all? These days, it's the EU's economic powerhouse and allergic to military aggression. It's gone from blitzkrieg to bake-off, and honestly, we love to see it. But the ghosts are still there. In the architecture, the curriculum, the silence during Remembrance Day. Japan went from empire-building warmongers to producing sushi, anime, and peace constitutions. But they still tiptoe around their wartime history like it's a particularly awkward family reunion. Meanwhile, the colonial powers, Britain, France, Belgium, came out of World War II broke, exhausted, and suddenly being asked questions like, hey, why do you still own half of Africa and Asia? Cue decolonization. Between 1945 and the 1970s, dozens of countries broke free from European rule, which sounds noble, until you realize most were left with shattered economies, foreign-imposed borders, and Cold War powers breathing down their necks, whispering, "So, what's your stance on capitalism?" And just when you thought this global migraine couldn't get worse, here come the human rights movements. The Holocaust forced the world to ask, how did we let this happen? And suddenly we had the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Nuremberg trials, and a new genre of political guilt that made dictators everywhere mildly uncomfortable. But here's the catch. We created the rules after the horror, and we're still not enforcing them evenly. Ask the Rohingya, ask the Uyghurs, ask anyone stuck between a drone strike and a dictator. So yes, still bleeding from it, still paying for it. The lines on today's maps, drawn by diplomats whose nations just stopped bombing each other. The global power structure, forged by war, sustained by paranoia, and carried forward by people who still quote Churchill on Twitter. And the fear that one man, one regime, or one lie could pull us all back into the abyss? Oh, that's not gone. It's just lurking. Quietly. We didn't end the war. We just hit the pause button and called it peace. Oh, and if you think that's wild, wait till you hear about the Olympic Games. Hitler tried to hijack the inflatable tanks that fooled the Nazis, and the time Stalin and Hitler played footsie before stabbing each other in the back. Yeah, history's got deleted scenes, and they are bonkers, right? You've earned a break from the existential dread. So how about we lighten the mood with some truly ridiculous, head-scratching, popcorn-worthy history that actually happened during World War II? You ready for this? No? Too bad. Let's start with Hitler's worst PR nightmare, Jesse Owens. Picture it, Berlin, 1936. Hitler's got the Olympic Games running like a fascist Coachella. The whole event is meant to be a flex. Aryan supremacy on full display, swastikas everywhere, stadiums full of Nazi fanboys. And then, in walks Jesse Owens, a black American athlete who proceeds to absolutely mop the floor with Hitler's master race. 4 gold medals, in front of the entire world. The Führer allegedly refused to shake his hand. But let's be honest, what do you even say to the man who just shattered your racist narrative in front of a global audience? That wasn't a track meet. That was a full-on ideological body slam. But wait, we're just getting warmed up. Next, Operation Fortitude, or how the Allies catfished the Nazis. So it's 1944, D-Day's coming, and the Allies need to invade France. But if the Germans figure out where, they'll turn the beaches into a meat grinder. Solution? Trick them into thinking the invasion's happening somewhere else. Enter Hollywood-grade nonsense. They set up fake tanks, rubber airplanes, even cardboard soldiers. The military version of inflatable lawn ornaments. They blasted fake radio chatter, hired actors to play generals, and used double agents to spread false info. The pièce de résistance? A whole fake army under General Patton, chilling in southeast England, like it was real. And the Nazis? Bought it. Hook, line, and Panzer Division. They were defending the wrong beach when Normandy hit. War won by literal balloons and theater kids with maps. Now grab your popcorn, because the next one's a plot twist worthy of Game of Thrones. The Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. Imagine 2 sworn enemies, Hitler and Stalin, signing a non-aggression pact in 1939. It's like Batman and the Joker agreeing to share an apartment. On the surface, it's just we won't fight. But secretly, they carved up Eastern Europe like it was a charcuterie board. Poland got split in half. The Baltic states, scooped up. These 2 weren't allies, they were just buying time to stab each other in the back more efficiently. And guess what? Hitler did stab Stalin in the back. Operation Barbarossa, 1941. Massive betrayal, millions dead, surprise ruined Christmas. This wasn't politics, this was a flaming clown car on a minefield. And just when you think it can't get any weirder, you know that bit in movies where the villain monologues his whole evil plan? Yeah, Hitler did that. In a book. Mein Kampf, published in the 1920s, was basically a how I'm going to destroy the world manifesto, and people just didn't read it. Or worse, read it and went, he's just being dramatic. Imagine if someone dropped a viral YouTube video titled Why I Deserve to Rule the Planet, and everyone just hit like and moved on. Spoiler alert, he meant it. Now, you might be thinking, surely after all that, the world learned its lesson, right? My sweet summer child. And that brings us to the real kicker. Everything we just covered, the fake armies, the rigged alliances, the blatant racism, the ignored red flags, we're still doing versions of that today. Only now it's digital disinformation, strongmen with Twitter accounts, and geopolitical backroom deals that shape the world before you even finish your coffee. And that brings us to the final chapter. You ready to hear how we took all this chaos and still didn't learn our bloody lesson? Because now, it's time for the mic drop. So, that was World War II. Not a clean-cut battle of good versus evil like the films love to pretend, but a spiraling mess of egos, empire, desperation, and denial. 6 years of hellfire that started with a treaty no one liked, fueled by economic collapse and fascist wet dreams, and ended with mushroom clouds, mass graves, and a world held together with duct tape and guilt. You'd think, after watching the most industrialized nations on Earth tear each other apart like rabid raccoons in a bin fire, we'd have learned something useful. Like, maybe don't trust angry men with mustaches. Or perhaps, just perhaps, don't rebuild your economy on genocidal nationalism. But no, of course not. Because here we are, almost a century later, and it's like history's decided to hit replay. We've got autocrats rising again like bad sequels. Political extremism isn't just back, it's trending. Democracies are cracking under pressure. Conspiracies, censorship, nationalism. It's the 1930s with Wi-Fi. And the nukes? Oh, they're still very much around. Just waiting silently in their little silos. Humanity's break glass in case of apocalypse, souvenir from the war to end all wars, which, spoiler, didn't. North Korea's waving theirs around like it's show and tell. Iran's flirting with them. And the US and Russia? Still sitting on enough firepower to deep fry the planet twice over, just in case the first time wasn't thorough enough. Meanwhile, the world order that rose from World War II, the UN, NATO, the rules-based international system, is starting to creak. It was always a bit like a group project run by the loudest kid in class, but now everyone's arguing about who's even in the group anymore. Oh, and let's not forget, the global refugee crisis, modern genocides, and rising hate crimes. All of them carry DNA from that war. We didn't cure the disease, we just put a plaster on it and hope for the best. So what's the lesson here? Power doesn't sleep, fascism doesn't die, and history, it doesn't repeat, it rehearses, loudly, and we keep giving it front row seats. So yeah, sleep tight. History's still out here biting people.